Welcome to Racing Today, where the spirit of South African horse racing lives. Now, the reverberation of the 2023 Betway Summer Cup has still got us in a tailspin, with the adrenaline still pumping from an epic race meeting, if ever there was one. I'm Benny Langa, and I'll be joining you as we pace around the who's who of the sport of kings and all the other royals who've become part and parcel of the world we have come to love. I'm joined by one of our OGs and journo on a horse. Mr. Andrew Bond is back in studio. We thought it would be an opportune time to take a little bit out of the second wind conversation of race horses, and that's what you've come. You come here with a very special story that you and I spoke about not too long ago, but it's grown quite nicely. It's come to fruition.
It has, and everybody says, like Martin Luther King, I have a dream. Jessica George had a dream. She had the infrastructural support of her father, of Douglas Welsh, of her mom, of so many beautiful people around her, and more than anything else, let's not forget she had the horse that was produced by Douglas Welsh, and she's taken him to supreme heights and is now officially a qualifier for the 2024 Paris Versailles Olympics.
I mean, all of us as South Africans should be very, very proud. But you and I had this conversation some time ago when she still had quite a long ways to go. And I'm talking about Jessica George as well as Wrap Up. They still had to pass the ultimate test to actually make it through to Paris. And they did. And you were there to see it all happen.
Yeah, I think I live my life by analogies. And I always think about the big match temperament of the Springbok rugby team and how they are just natural born winners. They've just proven time and time again that they can get to the highest level and they just don't choke.
You know, what's interesting about this particular conversation, and again, we touched on it in part, but we're really going to get into it today, is the repurposing of these horses. And the idea that if a horse wasn't particularly good, or to use some of your colorful language, but maybe belonged on the scrap heap, it doesn't mean that this horse doesn't have something to offer in the equine world. Doesn't mean that they don't have some sort of glory to still attain. And that's what's happened with Wrap Up.
This horse, Wrap Up, was an absolutely useless racehorse. He was a big glump. And Craig Udy used to train him, and somehow through his network, Douglas Welsh found this horse. He's a son of Gray's Inn. Gray's Inn was known as the African Lion. He won the 2004 Vodacom Durban July, as it was known in those days. And he was number 10, and he had the South African emblem on his cloth because it was 10 years of independence. 10 years, obviously, since the incomparable Nelson Mandela was released. So it was a very special time for South Africa. And he traveled the world. He went to Dubai, he went to Hong Kong, he went to Australia, and he came back to South Africa, and he proliferated his genes down at Rosedene Stud with Graham and Esme Costa, produced a fantastic racehorse in Legal Eagle, who was before your time. But he was a magnificent racehorse. He won 3 Queen's Plates. He won probably 7 or 8 Grade 1 races. But conversely, Wrap Up was useless. Douglas found
opposite
a horse,
end of the spectrum.
Totally opposite end. You know, he was just so big for his frame. He didn't have the muscular power to drive the skeletal structure. And Douglas had the wisdom to give him time. And Douglas, having been to Lexington to the World Equestrian Games earlier on in his career, was getting on like some of the Madalas we see sitting here.
Oh, trust me. If your performance on Summer Cup Day is anything to go by, you still have many more years to offer in this particular
Horses
sport.
make you young.
I can tell you that. Well, you did actually get on the ground like you always do, and you brought us some very interesting packages back, and I want to share that with the audience because this is a story of national pride as far as I'm concerned. All South Africans should be proud of Jessica George and what Wrap Up have accomplished here. So let's take a look at an insert that was put together by our good friend, Mr. Andrew Bond, the journo on a horse, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about that.
Today was huge. I think being the last qualification that we need for Paris, there's going to be a lot of celebrating after today. I think it's just the build-up, the hours, the sweat, the blood, the tears, the drama, the politics, and we've all been dreaming of this moment, and I'm just so proud of Rapper, so grateful for the team.
This weekend, it was so marvelous. It's like a dream came true. I was like every time praying, kneeling down, thinking that what's gonna take place, but everything went smoothly, perfectly the way we want it to be.
So can you see yourself leading this beautiful Son of Grey's Inn down the Palace of Versailles in 2024?
That's my dream. That's my dream. I have to be there.
Yes, you said yes.
I'm over the moon. I just want to be there.
That scar on your chin represents something very special to me because it shows just how unvain you are. That we interviewed you the day after you fell on Bella at this very self-same venue. You fell again and then you decided it's no more other horses, it's only Rapper.
I think this whole journey has taught, like this whole process has taught me that it's not really the destination, it's not the Olympics, it's about the person you become. You know, there are going to be hard times. I think as South Africans, it's kind of our speciality, kind of rising from the hard times and fighting back.
Okay, Jess, so let's get back to the dressage. It's miles and miles away from here, and he really came through his paces superbly well.
No, he was really on the dressage. He just really performed so beautifully. We had a really, really detailed plan, and it's really cool when that plan comes together.
Okay, so now you've got the dressage out of the way, huge sigh of relief, and then you go and walk this course. And you end up doing over 25 kilometers on the day on your own feet, making sure that you know this course back to front, inside out.
I had to make sure that there was not a single hole or rock or anything that Rapper was going to fall into or trip over. So it was just like hours and hours of walking. But yeah, Rapper was amazing. He didn't hit a hole, so I was so grateful. It was a lot of fun.
In the far distance, and I have zoomed in on that jump, it's a tier, or 1, 2, 3 element. And it's like jumping out of an aeroplane, that second element. And then that skinny, that is so high, that brush. I mean, how do you actually fathom how your horse is going to get through there?
No, so we actually do a lot of training. When I'm training with Douglas, we do a lot of training where we work on our skinnies and practice. So for me, that sort of thing, it's kind of like a maths formula. I always say if you're prepared, it makes you confident. And so walking that, I was 100% confident because I knew that we had practiced this equation and that he was going to do it beautifully.
Such a heartwarming and interesting story, Mr. Bond. I mean, your comments with regards to international credibility. How does this, I mean, I saw the judge there talking about it, but how does this now allow us to talk about our sport at an international level?
Well, whether you're talking about rugby or cricket or the African Cup of Nations, you have to attain a certain standard.
Yeah.
And in order for you to attain a certain standard, you have to have international judges presiding over the event. And so that's why the FEI were in South Africa, a very, very expensive exercise to bring them in from Belgium and from Holland and from Poland. In fact, one of the guys that we spoke to will be actually judging at the World Equestrian Games, rather the Paris Olympics.
Okay.
So he has been involved in this game for the last 2 decades,
Sure.
highly revered and in awe, absolutely in awe of the endurance of Jessica George and her horse, because the course that she participated in, remembering now that you start off on the Friday dressage, which is balance and coordination and discipline.
Yeah.
This was obviously a military sport beforehand. Then you have the cross country, which was 5,778 meters, which is nearly 3 times the difference of the distance of the Summer Cup.
For me to put a bet on. But we'll take a quick ad break, Mr. Bond, and I want you to actually break down exactly how it is that Jessica George achieved this feat. I know we touched on it before, but you're back now. You saw it with your own 2 eyes. Yeah, refresh us. I'm certainly fascinated by the story and would love to hear more after the break. We learn about the owners of this magnificent athlete and her amazing leaps towards the golden medal. Welcome back to Racing Today, where the thoroughbred is the star of the show. Let's not forget the humans that balance the equestrian. Of course, we've been talking about a wonderful story of a duo that is set to take the world by storm. And Andrew Bond and I are talking of horse wrap-up and show jumper extraordinaire Jessica George. Andrew, let's take a look at the adventures of these two and take it in for a minute. But before we do that, prior to us coming back from the break, we were talking about this international certification. I'm very interested in it because I didn't know that we could reach those heights just as South Africans in the show jumping arena. I think what Jessica George has done deserves the attention of every South African, as I said. But I actually want to paint a picture of how difficult it is to do it at an international level or an international stage.
Yeah, you know, if you look at any sport, South Africa are world-renowned rugby players. We should be world-renowned soccer players, but somehow we're not. I don't know why.
We're working on that. The ladies are certainly working on that.
Yeah, the ladies are good on that.
Yeah.
Cricket, the same applies to them. But one sport that we are truly world-class in is golf, because we have, amongst our golfers, still very much alive in his late 80s, the incomparable Gary Player. I mean, he's won more tournaments than you would ever care to mention.
Exactly.
He won 13 South African Opens, which is taking place at Blair Athol this weekend. So the point is that South Africa is a great sporting nation. We are unique in the way in which we have this incredible resilience to fight through so many obstacles. And Jessica George is a classic example of that. She's 100%. Taken the bull by the horn. She's believed at the tender age of 23 that she can get to Paris, that wrap-up can get to Paris. That's the next hurdle. But in the meantime, she's now qualified at Oaksprings with her dressage, her cross-country, her show jumping. She's got a fantastic team behind her. And the international judges have come out to ratify the quality of the course, the height of the course, the distance of the course, just to make sure that nobody has any doubts.
Talk to me about their role, because I know you spent a lot of time with them, and you have a much keener understanding of how these judges get involved from qualifying to the actual event in Paris.
Well, first of all, they love coming to South Africa because we do have a beautiful country that they can visit. Secondly, I think it's novel for them to see this little dark corner of Africa producing such incredible event horses.
Absolutely.
The one guy from Holland said to me, you could bring the 10 best Dutch horses to South Africa, and only 4 of them would finish that course. That's how arduous Oaksprings was on the outskirts of Mooi River. As I said, nearly 6 kilometers of hill and dale, and they were truly impressed with the standard of our show jumpers and our cross-country horses, and in fact our dressage horses, and they reckon that we are absolutely world-class, and we don't have to stand back for anybody.
Absolutely, as they should be. As they should be. And in fact, you put together a special package so that we can understand just how hard it was to get through to that international stage we've been talking about. Check this out, courtesy of Mr. Andrew Bond.
So I think so far with the dressage and especially with the cross-country yesterday, she really did a terrific job. There was a lot of pressure on her, and she really took that pretty good as such a young girl. I think the horse was also very ambitious in the beginning. He showed at the end also that he was in a very good shape, very good condition. And then after fence 3, she really got her horse in the rhythm and then really went on pretty well.
So for other people qualifying around the world, they are jumping against international competitors. She was jumping against herself, against the qualifying time, and judges that have come out, especially to make sure that the course is legitimate and that she is worthy of a place in the Versailles Paris Olympics.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's much easier if you will qualify like in Europe, where we have quite a lot of events. And for her, I think the biggest difficulty was her last and only chance here to qualify for Paris. So she really has been under a lot of pressure here, but she made it perfectly.
Do you believe that he is an international standard horse that will be able to take on those jumps at the Palace of Versailles 2024?
I definitely think so. Yeah, seen him here in the cross-country yesterday. He has a lot of scope for the jumping. And I think, in my opinion, only seen him once here, but in my opinion, he's a 5-star horse.
Okay, and finally, a guy like Douglas Welsh, who's been to Kentucky to the World Equestrian Games, he has so much experience. He was the original rider of Wrap-Up. It must be so good for Jessica to have this advice and this knowledge and this experience behind her.
Definitely, to have somebody like Douglas behind you who has international experience. We also talked about it on the lunch yesterday, like what's all important later on for that higher events in Europe. But Douglas will really be a very big help for Jessica.
Fascinating, Mr. Bond. Is it fair to say that you have to be a fairly, let me not say a decent or gifted athlete, but you have to be very versatile to be able to compete in this particular sport? Because you mentioned that even internationally, they've got their eye on us. But you've also got to have a team around you, don't you? And enter, of course, the groom that works with this particular horse and works with Jessica George.
That is a program on its own.
Yeah.
Tao comes from Zimbabwe. And the bottom line is that Tao is a unique human being that understands his horse so well that I don't think anybody in the world will be able to take wrap up to the great heights that he has ascended to, because this team is complete with Tao.
And teamwork is the operative word here. There's vets, there's the likes of trainers, there's the likes of, you know, everybody that works to make sure that the upkeep of this horse is absolutely pristine, because all the other horses are getting the same treatment everywhere else around the world and from wherever they come from. So to have a groom like Tao and to have his kind of training and his professionalism is absolutely a plus in this sport.
Well, it is, because he's worked in show jumping yards. He's worked, funnily enough, for Mike de Kock.
Yeah.
He worked for Paul Matchett. He actually worked for Paul Peter. So he's been around racing yards. So he understands the very nature of the thoroughbred. But it's also, it's like a Grand Prix team.
Yeah.
The chain is as strong as its weakest link, and he is definitely not anywhere near anything weak.
Yeah.
He is so strong and so disciplined. The way he feeds the horse, the way he grooms the horse, the way he does physio on the horse. And this is a very, very well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And I think Jess would be the first to admit that without Tao, they'd be up a creek with no paddle, because very few grooms could do what he does.
Well, speaking of the last link in the chain, we're going to take a quick ad break, because that's the very last link in the chain of a very interesting and a conversation that makes me very, very proud to be a South African and someone who's involved in the equine world myself. So thank you very much for that. Now that's what tenacity, faith, and good old hard work will get you. The synchronicity in the story is out of this world. Andrew, when we come back, we look at the rest of the team that ensures the goal towards the gold is met. See you guys after this. Welcome back to Racing Today, where we are talking all things equine, only Mzansi style. We are with the journal on a horse, as we like to call him, and we're unpacking a heartwarming story of a fairly exceptional thoroughbred that has become a grand player in her new career as a show jumper. Horse wrap-up has caused quite a stir in jumping circles, but as is principle, I suppose, in this particular sport, it's not as easy and as cut and dry as some people might think. For Jessica George to have gotten to Paris in the way she did, there's certain disciplines that she had to overcome and shine at in order to get to where she is now.
Effectively, she's a triathlete on a horse.
Yeah.
So this military exercise of discipline, dressage, endurance, cross-country, and precision show jumping has to all come together. So you can't just have a one-dimensional horse. This horse has to be able to switch his mind from calm and control and balance to brute power and strength and meticulous distance judging.
With the horse now having qualified, horse and athlete, or both athletes having qualified, and I mean, that's a point of pride already on its own, but there's still work to do. Got to get the horse there, got to make sure it's quarantined. What's the process that they have to follow now?
Well, I suppose it's very, very complicated, like imagining what's going to happen next year when there's a general election. How is this beautiful country going to succeed? How is Wrap-Up going to succeed in showing the world how brilliant he is by competing at Versailles, Paris? So there's a huge protocol. And the European Union came out to South Africa. They inspected our facilities. We've been traveling horses for many, many decades. I myself was on a plane in 1979. I beg your pardon, it was 1997. It was a little bit of dyslexic. A horse called London News went to Hong Kong, door to door, 48 hours. I think anybody will realize that we've gone backwards since then. I don't know why, but the bottom line is that we need to get this horse out of South Africa, and he has to go through a quarantine facility.
Which takes time.
Takes time. And you lose fitness by going into quarantine.
That's my next question, Mr. Bond. Conditioning now. I mean, how does this affect conditioning, and how can they circumvent what they're already preempting could be happening in terms of the protocols that they have to follow?
Well, the science is simple. If you are PCR clear with African horse sickness. You go into quarantine, they take another test 10 or 12 days later, and if you're still negative, the science says you cannot have African horse sickness.
Yeah.
The rest of the world are still paranoid about African horse sickness. You cannot get bitten by a midge inside a quarantine station that is vector protected.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's airborne. It's carried by a midge. So if you go to another jurisdiction where there is no midge, you cannot get African horse sickness.
Right? Or
It's an
parasite,
insect. It's called the Culicoides midge.
Yeah.
And you can speak to all the scientists, they'll all tell you the same thing. But the rest of the world, they are protecting the export protocols of Australia and New Zealand. They don't want South African horses to encroach on their market.
From Racing Today's perspective, and the spirit of South African horse racing's perspective, is that we're going to wish them the best. We're going to hope that they wave that flag high.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hopefully they hear. I'm going to train you how to blow a vuvuzela. Hopefully they hear vuvuzelas from here all the way in Paris. I know how much the French hate our vuvuzelas by now, but it is a point of pride, especially after we walloped them as a nation in the Rugby World Cup. Jessica George is going to continue that new tradition that we've set with the Springboks, and we're very, very proud of her. I hope this message reached her, the connections, everybody's involved with this particular horse, and everybody that's involved with training and conditioning this horse to get it there.
Just one thing I want to leave you with. Every horse needs people to back him.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that the Kempston Group have been very, very much behind Jessica the whole way, supplying her with infrastructural support, transport, finances. They've been the rock of Gibraltar.
Yeah. Shout out to them. Shout out to you, Mr. Bon, and everybody watching at home. Folks, that was a beautiful edition of Racing Today. I wish you all a beautiful week ahead. Do check us out on our socials and share all your activities with us. Make sure to follow Wrap Up and Jessica George and lend a hand where you can. From me, Mr. See You at the Races, and the Journo on a Horse. See you next time.